Shabbat Shalom, Moadim L'Simcha. How fortunate we are to be able to gather together. Thank God. A couple of weeks ago, on a dark and rainy afternoon, I found myself with 6 very close friends ringing a doorbell on an almost unmarked building, waiting to be let in, clearing security, as it were, with the correct password, being led down a dark hallway to a destination unknown. Once inside and the door closed behind us, we were welcomed to this strange and shadowy place, and we were given some rules and a task. We were to be given 1 hour to solve a series of clues in a locked room where we would have to find our way out, step by step, in light that wasn't very strong. We would have to solve a mystery and escape before the clock ran out. This particular mystery involved a murder on a train, a group of shadowy, unusual characters, and a series of locks and keys that were most difficult and mysterious to open. This experience required teamwork, required trust, required a kind of faith that we would get out before we were locked in there forever. That doesn't actually happen, not to worry. And it required a kind of creativity and ingenuity and willingness to fail. That was really a new experience for me in many ways. Perhaps some of you have experienced such a thing. These are immersive, exciting, visceral rooms called escape rooms. And they were invented in Japan. And depending on which website you choose, the first ones were either actually in Japan, the first real live ones, or a group in Hungary actually claims to have opened the first one. Either way, they quickly took over Asia and Europe, and by 2012, the first escape room in the United States opened in San Francisco, California. Just 3 years later, there were 367 escape rooms registered in the United States, and the number is still growing. Despite their very tactile, close nature, they made it quite well through COVID and are still going strong. The day after our escape from the Murder on the Orient Express escape room, a small nephew of mine convinced us to go back and do yet another one. This time we had to save all of humanity by working with very high-level scientific clues left by Nikola Tesla. And between you and me all, I'm still trying to figure out how on earth we got out of there, and even out of the first one. It was more or less over my head, but it was wonderful to be in an escape room with people, who have done it before, not those escape rooms. I'm not sure you can actually do them really twice, maybe a long time in between, but people who were comfortable and said, we've been in here, or something like this, and we're pretty confident we can find our way out. These escape rooms are marvelous. They range from the rather simple, although I doubt any of them are simple or they wouldn't be very compelling, gentle settings like an office where you have to find your way out of the locked office room, to some very frightening sounding ones where there is a villain chasing you, there are prison settings, there are like deserted island things. I had an image in mind beforehand that these would be like fun houses where, up was down, was up. They are quick in that you find out very much what you're made of if you're willing to let the process play out, if you panic, if you get excited, if you feel a sense of danger and stress because that big clock in the room is ticking down. Rest assured there is a game master for each escape room, someone very trained who I discovered quickly is watching your every move, because these can be very competitive and people don't always behave themselves, but they do that also so that you always know there is someone looking out for you. And that in a pinch, you can call out on your walkie-talkie and say, "Help, we need a clue." And they're right there for you. They've been watching your progress. There's a lot of psychology involved. And they'll either validate what you're doing or try to steer you in another direction. Because I was with very skilled escape artists, we got out of both escape rooms with about 10 minutes to spare. But I've asked these beloved family members of mine, perhaps we can go back to one of these, a different one, and with no expectation of escaping at all, we can slow down the process so that poor Tante Rabbi Shana can understand what on earth is going on in these rooms. You have to trust the process, and you have to be okay being in a narrow place and going through the steps in order to get out. As timing would have it, we were experiencing these 2 escape rooms in the week before Passover. And once again, I was struck, as I am wont to be, by the brilliance of our ancestors and our sages. In so many ways, the Exodus story is the story of an escape. The Israelites were in a very narrow place, frightened, stressed, not seeing a way out. And the story of the Exodus is one of the steps they had to take, the faith they had to show in one another, the ingenuity of their leaders, the willingness to call out at many times, and say, "Help, we need a clue. How are we going to find our way to the door?" And part of the escape room experience is that just when you think you've figured it out, another obstacle comes along to be put in your path that you have to overcome. If that isn't the Exodus story, I don't know what is. No sooner do the Israelites find their way out than there they are being pursued by the villain, standing at the shores of the Sea of Reeds, needing to find the magic combination, which of course isn't magic at all, but the way to ultimately get out. In the course of that experience, there was stress, there was fear, there was doubt, there was fighting. There were those who, like one or two of us in our escape room, just flopped down on the couch, as it were, and said, "That's it. We're never getting out of here. We're going to be stuck here forever." And then there were those that said, "We can do this. Let's stick together and keep going." It shouldn't surprise anybody, shouldn't have surprised me, that Jewish educators across the country and actually around the world seized on the escape room concept in these last few years to make some extraordinary Passover lessons and all school or all synagogue experiences where you have to solve the clues at each step of the Seder in order to get to the next part of the Seder or the next part of the lesson or group experience, whatever it is. This stuff is made for these modern media. I remember in the era of Survivor, when that was brand new, if some of you remember that, we did an all-school Survivor experience where the material of the Torah just lent itself perfectly to whatever the late 20th and early 20th century thought it had made up. But in fact, the guys that put these stories together and put our Seder together, they were master educators. And in a way, our Seder night was a little bit like an escape room. We have to do one step before we can get to the next. We remind ourselves that we're in slavery at the start of the evening, despite the glow and the beauty of the evening. We say, this year we are slaves. Next year, may we have escaped into freedom. It's a wonderful labyrinth, and labyrinths are very old, very natural, actually, speaking of spring, as we are doing lots today. But these mazes that come at different times of year that trick the mind into thinking one way is the right way only to find dead ends, and sticking to it, calmly, rationally, banding together, saying this is something we can overcome. There is a way out. There is a path to freedom. If that isn't Passover, and if that isn't an escape room, I don't know what is. Friends, on this Passover day, let's remember that, yes, there are so many times we call out from the narrow places, help! We need guidance. We need a light in the darkness. But if these experiences prove anything to us, it's that there's a way forward, and we can go there together. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.